You are now listening to For All Nerds Show, a podcast about geek and pop culture from the perspective of people of color. For All Nerds is hosted by DJ Benhameen and Tatiana Jones. For All Nerds Show is a member of the Loudspeakers Network, where we always say rest in peace to our founder, Combat Jack.
For All Nerds Show is powered by our listeners. Everything we do, from our podcasts, live events, our website, are all independently funded. Please continue to support us through our Patreon page at patreon.com/forallnerds.
I am Thor, son of Odin, and as long as there is life in my breast, I am running out of things to say.
Great, another broken white boy for us to fix.
That's my secret, Cat. I'm always angry.
You took everything from me.
I don't even know who you are. With great power comes great responsibility.
I can do this all day.
Wakanda forever!
And welcome, internets, to another episode of Views from the 616, the blackest MCU-focused podcast in the multiverse, powered by For All Nerds, where we discuss everything in and around the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And it's one of your hosts, Tatiana King, a.k.a. Tatiana Kang, the Conqueror, a.k.a. T'Challa Bread, a.k.a. Tesseract Thompson, a.k.a. Flex Luthor. And I'm joined by my always lovely co-host.
Thank you very much. I don't think you were prepared because it's your boy DJ Benhameen, a.k.a. Peter Parker, Lewis Can't Lose, Miles More Aliases, Ben Stacey Adams, Spider Punch Jump Up to Get Beat Down, Spider Ghostface, and Rest in Prowler.
Oh my God, the Stacey Adams one.
Ben Stacey Adams.
You won.
I've been on point like Stacey Adams.
Ben Stacey, the triplicate entendre that was. Good job, Ben. Oh, yes, y'all.
Thank you very
are
much.
Back, as mentioned. We are talking things in and around the MCU. And, of course, for this particular show, we got to see Across the Spider-Verse. That's actually a Sony property, just to remind everyone. So, one that they will not let go now, because
as they should. No, they got it.
It's printing money. You'll never see that die anywhere. Also, side note, shouts to every Spider-Man game on the PlayStation, but the PS5, including the upcoming one. That ish look crazy.
Oof! You still have yet to play them, right?
I played Miles Morales.
Okay, you did get to. Okay, you did
yeah.
get in Miles.
Yeah,
okay,
I got
good.
it, I got
Okay, all right, dope. Yeah, because Lord have mercy. Those are the two of the best Spider-Man stories ever told to me. You know, the first two. So I'm highly anticipating this one, and of course, these films Into and Across also now go up in my top 10 Spider-Man stories ever told.
Listen, Ben, I will have to echo that sentiment and top it. This is one of the best movies I've ever seen, period.
I'd say that.
I put this on the scale of Everything Everywhere All at Once, just in terms of storytelling, just in terms of everything that makes a work of art, a work of entertainment, of course, but really a work of art. And as the saying goes, this is cinema. This is how I feel about Spider-Man Across the Multiverse. Excuse me, the Spider-Verse, across every verse at this point, because I just never felt this way in a long time. Again, besides Everything Everywhere, I was absolutely floored after seeing this film.
Straight up, I've seen it twice now. I actually went back and saw it again right before we recorded this. We saw it yesterday together at a showing, and then it released in theaters today, and so I went and saw it again this afternoon, and that was the first time I tweeted about this. That was the first time I'd done that. When I was a kid, Unforgiven by Clint Eastwood came out, and I was a fan of Westerns, but I'd never seen no shit like that before in my life, and so when I saw it in theaters, I was like, what the fuck is this? And I went home and called my boys like, yo, y'all coming to see this fucking movie tomorrow? And we went and saw that joint again. And that was the first time that I can remember, other than back in the day, we used to just sit through joints over and over. You'd sneak in a movie and watch that joint 5 times in one day as a kid.
Okay.
But yeah, that was, oh man, that was that era when you could do shit like that. But, anyway, now it was that was the first time I'd done that as a grown ass man, where I was like, no, I need to see this again immediately. And so I went and saw it again immediately, and I loved it more the second time. I loved Everything Everywhere when I first saw it. It's one of them films like I love it. I think RRR sticks to me more out of that year.
Sticks to me too.
Yeah, RRR year might have been my favorite film of that year and probably one of the greatest things I've ever seen in my life. And right away, Across the Spider-Verse is definitely itching as best film of the year that I've seen so far. I mean, fuck, it's so close, right? Because that's the thing. All right, this year and over the last few years, there's been some animated films that to me have just kept raising the bar, which started with Into the Spider-Verse. And then there was Mitchell versus the Machines. The Mitchells versus the Machines on Netflix completely raised the bar, right? And then you have Pixar, which has been steady doing the same thing with like the Red Joint, which I loved, but it's another Pixar film. Like they've been like, now I won't say stagnant because in terms of how they look, it keeps getting better and better, but storytelling wise, it's the same kind of thing for me, right? And then the other one that raised the bar was Puss in Boots, which came out 5 days before the year ended, so I kind of counted for this year, and it's right up there with Across the Spider-Verse. I can't even act like it isn't, you know?
That's another one I want to see.
Yeah, you have to see it because it's like even though Across the Spider-Verse is, god damn it, you know, they're doing some shit in this movie, but they were doing some shit in Puss in Boots. So it's like the bar has been raised for animation, and I think it started with Into the Spider-Verse. And I think right now, because of that, Into the Spider-Verse has the lead because Mitchell versus the Machines was doing a lot of things that Into the Spider-Verse was doing, and so is Puss in Boots, which is like combining all these different mediums into its animation and doing different things with like frame rates where different things are animated at different frame rates in the same shot. And so it's all these little tricks. And there were so many new tricks that even having seen this film twice now that I had to figure it out. I was actually, this is a big name drop, but shout out to my brother and one of the creators and executive producers on this one and one of the directors of the first film, Peter Ramsey, and friend of the show.
Yes.
And I was DMing him today, and my first DM to him straight up and down was, yo, how the fuck did they do that?
Yes.
I was like, I didn't say hello. I didn't say anything. I just DM'd him. I'm like, yo, how the fuck? And he was like, bruh, I've seen it through its incarnations. I've seen it from script to this, to that, to every cut. And when I saw the final cut at the premiere, he was like, how the fuck did they do that?
Right. And it's interesting because while you're over there DMing Peter Ramsey, who's one of the executive producers, I'm over here talking to Frank Abney, who's one of the animators. Frank Abney, and another prolific animator, you know, friend of the show, all that. And he was telling me how he's never even, and maybe as of time you guys hear this, he would have, but he hadn't even seen the final cut of the film. And that's why I want y'all to know, like, literally the thousands of people, including the hundreds of animators that worked on this, like a lot of them have not even seen like their work. Or another thing like people don't realize is like when animators and people work on films like this, like they work on certain parts, but they may not see how it all fits into the whole big picture, right?
No.
They may see the trees, but not the whole forest. And then even then, like they may not see the forest for a while, right? And then when they do, it's just like, it's just another new world that they're experiencing. So for them to, like when you see them on Twitter and all these other places giving this feedback where they're like in total shock and they're just so happy, this is genuine. Like a lot of times they haven't even seen the finished product. And so to see how their pieces or their contributions have come together to create something so magical and magnificent that it pushes and drives this much emotion, positive emotion towards this film, like that's a lot. That's a lot. So I just want people to be like aware of that.
Yeah, and we also, me and you off the show, we discussed this when Wakanda Forever was coming out. And I was telling you, like, they'll have these big Hollywood premieres, and most of the people who work on it are not there because they want people who look good on camera. They want all the other superstars, people who don't work on it, but they, you know, they're like, oh, we can get this person to show up on the red carpet. We'll give them 2 tickets. So that's how it usually works. So like you said, people who work on it usually, I mean, down to the majority will not see it at the premiere. They'll see it and they might have to buy a ticket like the rest of us. You know, that's just how it rolls down. They might get a screener, but doubtful because with something like Into the Spider-Verse or Across the Spider-Verse, Sony is not sending out a screener to anyone. Could that, you know, the bootleg possibility. Yeah. So that's just not going to happen unless you're, I mean, you know, certain people are getting them. But.
Yeah.
not no animator, please.
And
no.
I also want to make sure we set the stage for how we saw this. And thank you to the Dolby team who invited us to this particular screening, because
I can really speak on that too.
We could speak on this. Now,
having seen it twice.
Right.
It made a damn difference, y'all.
It makes a difference. And I'm gonna let Ben. And after I explain what this was.
I want to be a commercial here, but I'm about to be a commercial.
Yes. After I explain what this was, I'll allow Ben to tell you guys the difference between how we saw it, which was in Dolby Cinema. So this was a particular room in the theater that we saw it in, the Dolby Cinema room, which has the way that this displays the film, the colors that they display, the vividness, the picture quality is much more rich and in depth than most, I guess I would say, standard screens you see it in. Mm-hmm. Even probably different than what you see in IMAX as well. And I'll let Ben speak to that in a second. And also you have the Dolby Atmos approach when it comes to the sound, right? So it was almost a warning, but one of the Dolby team members even said to us, hey, as you guys are sitting there, if you hear like whips and things coming from all around you, it's because that's how like their sound is set up. And when I tell you, like, I dead ass in certain scenes in the movie, I was just looking around like, well, who's there? Like it dead ass felt like somebody was behind me on my shoulder and this and this and that. Like that Dolby Cinema experience was completely different than what I was used to. I will say that. Like it and again, I haven't had the back-to-back experience that Ben is about to explain to you guys, but the way that the sound quality, the scene quality, and also the cinema itself, we were in these big comfy chairs, had some recline on it. We was up in the balcony, in the skybox, if you will. So we was living a life. It was a very, very comfortable experience. I will say that. So shouts again, thank you to the Dolby team. Ben, I mean, tell me, you saw it in Dolby Cinema the first time, and then the second time, how did you see it? In a regular theater room? How did you see it?
Well, you already gave enough of a commercial, so I'm not going to do too much, but I saw it the first time with you in the Dolby, and then today I went to the Alamo Draft House in Brooklyn, which is a theater I love, and I'm a big theater head. You know, I have been, like I said since a kid, I'm the type of kid who used to sit in the theater all day, you know, so even when I first moved to New York, I did my research on what are the illest theaters, and there was this one joint that they closed down a few years back. It was like a legendary joint. I got to go there. It was like an old school theater. Like, I don't know when that joint was built, but it was like, the screen was massive, and it wasn't IMAX, obviously, because it was well before that. So I love theaters, right? So I was hyped for the Dolby. Dolby was dope as fuck. I saw it on Alamo, and it was great. You know, Alamo's great screen, everything, but the difference in that difference in that Dolby was that sound. I mean, the screen was mad impressive as well, the richness, all that. But that sound from the opening of this film, when Gwen is banging away on them drums, it just and how everything rotated through there. So if you can see it in Dolby, I'm fucking with that Dolby theater. Like you said, even over most of the IMAXs in New York. Like
facts, big facts. So if you see something and that says Dolby Atmos, that's the sound that's on point. If you see Dolby Vision, the colors look different. They even gave us a demonstration at the very beginning, and I was like, all right, whatever. They was like, this is the color black. No, this is actually what the color black looks like. So I was like, all right, y'all on to something. So I will say, if you do see that opportunity to try that first, you'll get an even more rich experience. But again, thank you to the Dolby team. And with what Benhameen said, I do want to make sure we put that warning. This is a spoiler-filled review.
Yeah.
So
that being said,
we're gonna say.
Yeah, but we will, for the most part, there's like, especially towards the end of the film, we're going to keep our mouth shut because it is a hella twist at the end.
Big twist. What a twist!
What a twist, you know. That was some M. Night. That was like when good M. Night twist.
It was a good M. Night twist. Yes. There was a few twists, actually, but the one we're talking about, we won't give away.
Heartbreaking.
We won't give away the deepest of plot points. But we will say some details that it would be better if you have seen the movie first. So,
and we're going to talk about the themes, you know, as we used to do on Views, or as we do on Views, because there's a very big theme that on my second viewing became super apparent to me and really blew my mind and really fucked me up just in general. So I guess we should just talk about that before we even get into
the themes.
I mean, that is the theme, like, you know, like the big theme, you know, that I was, you know, explaining to you that, you know.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Well, since you have seen the film, right, and for everyone who has seen the film, and if you haven't, this is a spoiler-filled review. The main I would say, story of this film is that Miles Morales discovers the existence of the Spider-Verse, and he finds out that due to his creation in the first film, he is a problem, and Spider-Man 2099 has issues with him, and because of that, they get into conflict and has issues with how Miles is dealing with the Spot, who is the main villain of this series, and well, not of the series, but of this film, and will be the main villain of the next one. And Miles is determined to save his family and save everyone, as he expressed in the first one. And Miguel feels like you cannot save everyone. Miguel, Spider-Man 2099. So that's pretty much right.
That's a good grasp of everything. Sure.
Yeah, that's the main. That's the main. I mean, there's a lot more to it. I mean, Gwen Stacy has an amazing storyline, and I want to get into how that develops and how fucking incredible that is. But that's the main conflict of this film, right? And so, upon watching it the second time, I really peeped something about it, right? Is this film about the stories that we tell ourselves and that we are told to us, and our creation stories that lead to our identities and who we are as people, right?
The stories about ourselves.
Yes.
The stories we tell about ourselves. Yes.
And then also when it comes to the stories that we are told and that we love and ingest, do we only care about a story if it's canon? Miguel, Spider-Man 2099, seems to only care about stories that are canon. He also makes another point where he says only, like, when a story falls off its canon, only some of them can be saved, right? And that is when it started hitting me when I'm watching this movie, because I'm like, because as a huge comic head, first off, I know that people hold, and I've made a lot of jokes about this, people hold canon in the highest regard.
Mm-hmm.
And when stories are non-canon, they don't seem to care about them as much.
They flip out.
Yeah, they
quite
flip
literally
out.
flip out. Like
huge,
Spider-Man 2099 Miguel was doing.
There was a huge flip out a few years back, well, about 10 years back, when Star Wars got owned by Disney, and they erased the extended universe, and were like, those are now considered legends in the Star Wars canon. Those are not pure canon. They're just stories that are told, and they may or may not be. And now they're like adopting some of them into the canon. But people were super upset. And when it happened, I was like, why are y'all so upset? Like, you read those stories, right? It still matters to you.
It's so interesting, Ben, because, and there's 2 points I want to make about
to
this. To you. There's 2 points I want to make about that idea of the very fanboyistic viewpoint of things have to be canon, right? One, especially DC, Marvel, whatever comic book really at this point that you're thinking of, there has been from the cover of the comic itself to the stories and the characters and different variations, the idea of divergent stories and variations of the same character has always been there. That is one aspect that has generally not been there. So to me, that very staid idea of things have to only be canon, is what is the word I'm looking for? Like it's hustling backwards, right? Because it's just like, that's not like that's listen, y'all. This is why y'all listen to us, because this is the terminology I use. It's hustling backwards to me, because like comics were built on just being so black and white, right? Like it was built on allowing the freedom of imagination. And the idea, like, especially with when you look at Marvel, there's so many variations of where a character can go. And Spider-Man itself, granted it's owned by Sony right now, but Spider-Man itself, like, you've been seeing this Spider-Verse, Spider-Eye, like you've been seeing these variations. So the thought that, oh, that can't happen because that's not canon is preposterous to me. And I always felt like that limited mindset was so strange.
And it's interesting because it is like that. And even though Sony owns the rights to the film versions, the comics and everything else are still being produced by Marvel. And that's where all these ideas come from. But in that sense, like, it wouldn't be until they did the Spider-Verse thing and you saw, I cannot remember the name of the giant robot. It still didn't show up in this one. It damn well better be in the next one. But there's this giant robot from like the 70s Spider-Man. And until it showed up in the comics, I mean, people talked about it, but people were waiting for it to show up in the comics so it could be canon. And then it's like, now it's canon, now it matters, you know? But that's my point. Those stories still matter to you, right? And then another thing that was one of the meta levels of this is that the non-canon Spider-Man in real life, in the comics at least, rarely make it, right? Spider-Man 2099 is a perfect example of this. Spider-Man 2099 comes from the 2099 universe, which came out in like, I want to say about 94, 95, Marvel came out with this line of comics. And they were running along the same time as the regular comics, but they featured characters. They had Spider-Man 2099, Punisher 2099, Doom 2099. I want to say a Fantastic Four, maybe. I might have got that wrong. But eventually it featured, variations of everyone. Avengers, the X-Men, everybody, 100 plus years into the future, 2099. And so that's when Miguel first debuted as a character and was popular for about 5-6 years to about the rest of the 90s. So this when the huge 90s burst of comics happened, when Marvel could publish 100 different titles a month maybe and make, goo gobs off of all of them. So once the implosion happened, stuff like 2099 went by the wayside because the main Marvel universe is always going to be the one. Peter Parker is always going to be the one.
The main, okay.
Yep. And so that was pretty much the end of his run until a few years back they brought him back. So it was like for like 20 years he had no comics and maybe made an appearance here and there, nothing, but was forgotten except for the fans of 2099, except for the super fans, right? To mainstream audiences like yourself. You said this was the first time you ever heard of this dude when you saw the movie. So he's one of the forgotten Spider-Man. He's one of the non-canon universes that don't make it, right? Then we go back to this movie. In this movie, Miles Morales is revealed as the anomaly. He's the one that makes it, even though he's non-canon. And that it goes back to real life. Miles Morales is like the first time ever that another version of Spider-Man has become as, or if not more popular
than the main.
And I remember when he debuted and people were like, it's all the hate he gets today. Why is there Black Spider-Man? How can you also Spider-Man when there's Peter Parker? How can it be?
And this is after the existence of the Spider-Verse in the comics.
No, Spider-Verse, no, Spider-Verse actually comes after Miles. Spider-Verse actually does come from Miles. Like, Miles comes from the Ultimate Universe, which was another offshoot, right? The Ultimate Universe was, this is like mid-2000s. The Ultimate Universe was Marvel's attempt to tell all the stories that they told, but to a younger audience, without the hindrance of 30 years of canon, 60 years of canon. So they had Ultimate Spider-Man, which was a super dope series written by Brian Michael Bendis. And Brian Michael Bendis wrote like 100 issues of Peter Parker going through high school, all the stories that Stan Lee had all told, but just updated. And we see a lot of those versions in this the Green Goblin, who was in the first one, etc. So it was this Ultimate Universe. In the Ultimate Universe, Peter Parker dies and Miles takes over. It was outrage. It was complete pandemonium, even though this had nothing to do with the normal canon. Just the fact that a black man obviously was taking over as Spider-Man was outrage. But he was immensely popular. So popular that when the Ultimate Universe folded because they weren't selling no copies, and Marvel did this whole thing where the incursions came together and all the universes crashed together, Miles was the only survivor of the Ultimate Universe and moved over to the 616 because that's how popular Miles Morales is, because he's an anomaly amongst everything.
Got it.
So the movie's operating on fucking levels, and that was like...
So the movie is operating on canon, outside of canon, about the canon, inception of canon, like...
And talking about why we are so slavishly devoted to canon.
Yeah.
And that is something that has always been an issue with me. And it was messing me up because even like, it was funny, during the first viewing, I kind of got distracted a minute because I started getting into some deep thought about the stories we tell. And I was like, I'm sitting here watching this story and I was like, why do humans love stories so much? And I started thinking about that. Like, why are we sitting around? Because we've been doing this since the campfires, We've always sat around and told each other stories. And so I was like, why is that? So that kind of lost me. But I realized that's what this film is about. It's about the stories we're telling and the stories we tell ourselves. So it was kind of intentionally for me to get lost in that train of thought. And then on second viewing, I started getting the real stuff about how it's about canon and how Miguel represents those type of people who only care about things when they're canon, and it has to be canon or nothing else.
And that leads to the second point I was going to make about that mindset of Miguel, because when I thought about it, he reminded me of the TVA. because that idea of policing and controlling what timeline should, and or this case, what variants should stay, what are important, what's not, what should be pruned. Like, he essentially operated as a one-man TVA, like wanting to say, hey, you're not important, you don't matter, you're not supposed to be here, or this is not supposed to happen in this story. Granted, there were actual consequences to things not going according to the quote-unquote plan, but he operated on a sense that everything had a predetermined destiny and that there was no way to change it. And much like, as I mentioned, much like how the TVA, how their modus operandi is or was. And I just found that funny, like seeing that dichotomy there. And then hopefully what we'll get to see is that is proven wrong. We don't know yet. Mm-hmm. But I really like that you made that I guess theme, that first theme, because like it gave me those points of similarity.
Yep. And then even to expound on that even further, it goes back to like what I was saying about fans, how fans only want to see the same story being told. Even in Ultimate Spider-Man, which I love to death, it was basically the same Stan Lee stories that were told in the 1960s, just updated for our modern age. But because I hadn't read those Stan Lee stories thoroughly, I knew them through just, the general absorption of Spider-Man lore. It was very dope to me. And plus, it was updated for a modern age, so I could relate to it better. So I was like, this is dope. But I also like the fact that they made changes. And it's like what the last Final Fantasy, the remake, did, where people were upset that the story changed. But it's like, why do you want the same story that we told you 20 years ago in the 90s?
Nostalgia, familiarity.
And that's
fear of change.
If you got a Spider-Man, your Uncle Ben gotta fucking die. And it's like, why, dog? Like, why can't it be a Spider-Man with two healthy parents and his uncle? Why does it always have to be the same story? Right.
And I want to introduce that as the next theme for across the Spider-Verse, because that exact point you're making about how like it's the same Stan Lee story told 50 times over, 50 years over.
This time.
Like that's that was also a very intentional and meta approach that this film took. Yeah. Where it literally, like, you guys see it in the trailers, how there's thousands of Spider-Men, Spider-Women, Spider-People, whatever you want to call them. And those stories, that's the let's call it the template Stan Lee Peter Parker story, even though the Spider-Person might look a little different, it's played out over and over and over and over and over again. And then there's the question of that Ben is ringing, which is, can we do something different? Is it really going to break everything? Is it really going to break the timeline? Can we just do something different? Can Uncle Ben not die, to your point, right? And also, like, are the questions of, are all of these Spider people truly different? Are they all truly unique? Or are they may be unique in external view, right? You may see a black woman, you may see a white man, you might see a punk, you might see a buttoned up collared kind of guy, but are they all intrinsically the same exact archetype?
Yes. It's even funny, like Marvel used to do this thing like every 10 or 15 years, they would try and reinvent Spider-Man. And I remember when I was coming up, the one with Speedball, and don't ask if you don't know. My man's name was Speedball.
Don't know, so I won't ask.
And I even knew Speedball was a reference to drugs, so I was like, wow, that's wild. But, his name was Speedball. He had some weird powers about bouncing and shit. But his whole thing was Spider-Man. Teen, gets the powers accidentally. Somebody dies because he's not ready and responsible, has to put on a mask and hide himself from the populace who love Speedball but hate the normal dude. It was the same shit. Worked for 50 or so issues, flopped out, gone. Nobody remembers that nigga, And they did that over and over again until they got to Miles Morales. And this was the first time it stuck, and it was hilarious because this was when it was like, this is Spider-Man again, but he black. And that, was enough because all these other dudes have been white, honestly. And as we know, diversity and inclusion will always get you more because there's more of us than there are of them.
It's the Little Mermaid, but she's black. So freaking
200 million.
It's the same. 200 million. It's literally the same story again. and that's the cold part about it. Yes. People will get up in arms and try to review bomb it because they're so freaking racist, not even knowing at the end of the day, it's literally the same story again. Nothing has intrinsically changed.
And then also what really made Miles stick, and even though he was started by Brian Michael Bendis, was the fact that they included, his mom is Puerto Rican, his dad is Dominican. So it has this they had that culture, and other writers have come on, and people, just grew to that right away because you hadn't seen that yet a lot in the MCU. There weren't a lot of Latin heroes and on the forefront, and he just caught on. But like, once again, that doesn't happen. Normally, it's just, oh no, this is not my canon. I don't give a shit. And so that's why he's a miracle, and that's why these films are miracles. I mean, and we've talked about this, like, if you can go back to the records of ForAllNerds, because I used to talk about how, Miles was such an important character because of that. And even on the first film, I felt, shout out to our brother Beans, like, when we were standing in line for the first Into the Spider-Verse, he's like, this is better than Black Panther. And while I don't know if it is to this day, I think they're comparable. But I feel like this is a more important film than Black Panther. Just like I feel how, in the long run, I feel Blackish is a more important show. Well, not Blackish, Abbott Elementary is a more important show than Black Panther is a film.
Do you think because it's bringing
showing
it down
Black people as humans?
Humans, that's the part I was trying to say.
Before being heroes and being heroes. But what Abbott Elementary does is showing, and what this film does is show Black people and brown people being heroes as humans. In everyday life, they're being heroes. All cops are bastards, and this film got me over here rooting for my boy.
The cops, right?
Rooting for my, for Pops. You know what I mean?
Rooting for 12.
Rooting for 12 because my man's a good dude, and I feel him.
Yeah.
So, like, even though it's a bit of propaganda, propaganda.
It's propaganda.
I'll excuse it in this case. I gotta
you overlook it in this case because it made the story helped make the story so good. And I see what you're saying now, Benhameen, with that. Like, what I was about to say when I said bring it down, I meant bring it down to an even more relatable level. Like, this isn't, even though, yes, Miles has powers, okay, but everything that this movie talks about, the very, very beautifully, I'm sorry, I'm going to say perfectly written storyline.
Oh, God, it's damn near.
It's so humanistic in nature. It's less even though, yes, the powers are cool, but it's less about the powers and more about the person inside. It's more about the human interactions. It's more about the relationships between characters and how they play off of each other, how they don't, how they got static with each other, how they love each other, how everything. Like, quite literally, this film explores the depths of humanity and going both ways, negative and positive.
All right, and speaking on that, I want to get into the Gwen and Miles relationship. But before we do that, I want to talk about, because we talk about the writing, I want to talk about the opening of this film and how it opens with a good solid 10 to 15 minutes of
20.
Gwen Stacy.
It was like 20 minutes, and that was just the intro.
Of Gwen Stacy, no Miles at all, other than being in a photograph. And what a daring risk that was. And then to pull it off with verve,
it was pulled off.
Look how we pulled that bitch off, like a magic trick.
It was pulled off so adeptly because as I was sitting there, like, I was already in awe, and then the title screen came on, and I literally pushed back in my chair, and I said, "Nigga, that was just the intro."
Just the intro, and it told Gwen's whole story, like the story that we never really got in the first film.
The whole story.
That quick 20 minutes gave her everything we ever, like, gave her a feature film, and it's what Pixar used to do at its prime.
Oh my goodness.
Give you a feature film before the credits.
And you talk about the shorts, the shorts.
No, like, not even
the Pixar shorts.
Like, not even shorts. Like, when you watch Up, the first 15 minutes of Up is a film.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Before it goes on its own journey. It tells you the story of his life in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And then it goes on this other journey. And what other films used to do that was like Indiana Jones. You can watch any of the original Indiana Jones 3 films. And before the credits drop, there's a short film of Indiana Jones doing some wild shit. And it's a whole film right there. But it's a quick, short film. And so films have always done this trick. Great writing, great films. But to feature it on a whole ass nother character,
like, and Gwen Stacy is also a well-liked character anyway in the film.
In the film, since the MCU, like Ghost Spider, the Gwen Stacy version, she's particularly new to the comics. Like, Gwen Stacy is a character who has been dead forever.
Yes.
That's been canon, and that's been one of them things was never disturbed. Like, there's Uncle Ben, Gwen Stacy, it used to be Jean Grey, and it used to be Bucky Barnes. Were the 4 people in Marvel who never would fucking come back. I don't give a damn what. If you bring them back, it's a ghost. It's a somebody faking as them. You know, it's the Scooby-Doo. They pull off the mask. You're not Bucky Barnes. You know, that was like from down high. It was never changing. And then the first was Jean Grey. She came back. And then the second was Bucky. He came back as Winter Soldier. And then Gwen and Uncle Ben were still like, nah, nigga, these niggas is dead. You know what I mean? And then they brought back Gwen Stacy in an alternate universe. It was, you know, this still in the main universe, she's still dead. You know, and that ain't never changing. But they did this, and it was a lot of rage because people were like, no, she gotta be dead. You know, and it's like, oh, it's an alternate universe. In this universe, she gets bitten, you know, woo, woo, woo. Ah! But once again, you put a woman when it's always been a man, and you retell the same story.
And also, like, I had said this before. I've said this before years ago to you. Like, just because Marvel or whoever it is kills off a character, it don't mean he not necessarily come back. Except for, you know, these maybe 4.
Yeah, those 4 for the longest.
But everybody else, I've seen people get killed off 5, 6 times and they come back, right? Like they come back later story, or it's like, oh, so and so resurrected them. It's just like none of this. All of this is what they say. It's not immutable, right? Like you can do whatever. You can do whatever. It's free, and
there are no rules.
There
back
are
to everything,
no rules. And that goes back to everything that we've been talking. It goes back to
everything, everywhere, all at once. There are no rules,
and the concepts of Spider-Verse, and of course, if you're talking, and that's adjacent to the MCU, but the MCU itself of the multiverse, right? Like everything is true, everything is possible, and that is done with incredible taste and incredible professional, just an exceptional level of talent that this film was able to show that, like that everything and anything is absolutely possible. And especially towards the big twist in the end is just this things that it just puts you in the position to understand that whatever you thought, it was probably not that. Whatever you think could be is probably more. It's teaching you to expand. What is it? Expand your horizons, diversify your bonds. Like to me, this film is one of those lessons. And here's another theme anyway. Diversify your bonds, my guy. Like everything you thought, there's more to it. Your horizons need to be expanded. Everything. Like from the way like the characters, I kept talking about how the way the characters interacted, like their relationships grow and fold in on each other and expand and contract in so many different ways. Gwen and her father, Gwen and Miles, Gwen and these new niggas from the Spider-Verse HQ. Like it's happening so rapidly that one of the adjectives I used for this film was that it's so kinetic. This film moves. It's fucking moving the whole time. And I don't think it's too fast. I just think for me, it was never a dull point. There was never a slow area. There was essentially no real downtime. I'm using that and I'm meaning that in the most positive light. Like
there was there's definitely peaks and valleys,
but
that's
peaks
how
and valleys, but not
there should always
downtime.
be peaks and valleys. You
like
can't have all peaks.
I mean, when I say downtime, I'm talking about films where you're like, yeah, this is the time I could go to the bathroom and not miss nothing. It was quite literally, if you missed a frame, you missed some key information.
Yeah. And we'll get to the Easter eggs at the end of this, but that is something I'll just say overall for the Easter eggs. That's something that I really love about this. To me, none of the Easter eggs distract or add from the story in this.
It's so much.
And they're not the point of the story.
It's not the point. It's beautiful. It's beautiful tertiary
it's garnish
things.
Yeah.
I mean, and that requires third and fourth and fifth viewings, to be quite honest with you, because it's such extensive garnish that it requires multiple viewings to even notice half the time.
Yeah, such extensive garnish to notice, and also it's irrelevant to this beautiful story that they told, and that's what I love, because in a lot of these films, a lot of these, lately in MCU films, and all of them, people go for Easter eggs.
And
there are whole YouTube videos dedicated to, pointing out every Easter egg you missed.
And you'll be here for 10 days trying to do that with this film. And it's okay. And let me be clear. It's okay if that's what you came for. But this film is so well done. It has no reliance on Easter eggs. It's quite literally there because they could. And that's some baller-ish to me. Like, you doing it because you can, not because you have to. That's how good they did this film.
I mean, I, for one, screamed out loud when I saw Julia Carpenter. I actually had to Google her name because I didn't know her true name. Julia Carpenter. She is a Spider-Woman who appeared in Marvel's first Secret Wars when Jessica Drew was out of the picture for a while. I think Jessica had lost her powers at the time, so she was out of the picture. She'd retired from being Spider-Woman. And so when Secret Wars happened, when the Beyonder brought everybody together on this planet, this new shorty showed up, and her costume, if you Google it, is a variation of the black and white Spider-Man costume, and that's what it was said first inspired Spider-Man when he got his black and white costume, because he gets his a few little later. So I always loved her because she had a dope costume and had different powers than the rest of the Spider people too. So she was kind of ill. So when she showed up, I was like, oh shit, she don't say a damn word. She just walks up real quick, and I'm like, oh, but that's what I mean. It was irrelevant. If you don't know about that, it doesn't matter, and it's not one of those things where you feel like, damn, I'm missing out. Like, I'm not shouting out. I mean, not to call it The Flash, especially because I really enjoyed that film, and that's something we have another review coming for. But there are things in that film where I felt like, unless you know it, it doesn't matter, and it's like
Facts.
It takes time out of the movie, and it's irrelevant to the story where it's kind of like slowing down things because that could be chopped for those who don't know, and it won't matter. And for those who do know, all it is, oh, I know that reference.
Yeah.
But it's not story.
It's a lot of that stuff that could have been clipped to that point.
And I still love the film.
There was 2 or 3 people who were like, oh, yeah. And I'm like, what the hell are y'all talking about?
But, like, Marvel did this, like, when they first introduced Thanos. I will never forget being in the Avengers film. And at the end credit scene, Thanos says, I guess I'll do it myself. And I damn near jumped out my seat. Dude next to me, because I went and saw that by myself, dude next to me damn near jumps out of his seat. And his girlfriend who's sitting with him is like, who is that? Loud as hell. Because she had no idea who the fuck Thanos was. And so, but that was perfect for an end credit scene.
Yeah.
But when you take up time in the film with who the fuck is that reference, it's like, it's just come a distraction. On. You're just doing it to do it. And that's why, like, this film ain't doing it there are literally thousands of Easter eggs.
There's thousands.
None of them to me, even though I caught like Julia Carpenter and I'm naming all these Spider people in that lobby scene. I'm like, yo, oh my God, oh. But it didn't matter, because besides that, I'm like, yo, this story.
The story is so phenomenal.
Like you said, the relations, and I just want to hone in on this Gwen and Miles relationship because I think it's so beautifully done. Like, they are both characters who have all these damage and all these things going on with them, and they're young. And they're exploring love, and they're exploring these feelings for, like, the first time. And Miles to me, I mean, his hair, everything was me at that fucking age. That I was like Miles was a handsome young man, but I was a kid who was so geeked out and so, like, just into my own head all the time that I couldn't even see myself especially as I hit puberty and started to grow. And like people were like, yo, Ben's, looking, and I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm going to go play some Dungeons and Dragons, So it's like I wouldn't get that. And so when women started taking interest in me and stuff, I was just like Miles, where I was just trying to feel it out. So seeing that shit and seeing like where they don't even kiss, they barely can even hold hands in this film, but they clearly love each other and they clearly know it. And they're also trying to avoid the canon that they know.
Avoid the destiny, right? Avoid the predetermined timeline.
Tell their own story, man.
It's
when that nigga was like, yo, but she's like, in every universe, Gwen falls for Spider-Man, and in every universe, Gwen dies. He's like, well, maybe we can,
she says it doesn't end well.
Yeah, it doesn't end well because she didn't want to let him know.
She didn't want to let him know, right.
Usually ends with me falling off a bridge and my net snapping, bro.
It's also a lesson in, and it's also a lesson in like what happens when you keep too many secrets from someone and how they get out, but also the complexities and the difficulties and reasoning about why people keep secrets and why they do it for your own protection or to try to help make your life better, but it always comes out to light, right? And the damage of that, whether you want to call it a lie, whether you call it, a lie by omission, whether you call it, oh, I'm just holding part of this information from you, withholding information, how that has ripple effects, especially when you're talking about like someone's life and predetermined destinies and all this other stuff. And also just the fact that even if you hold the information, the fact that they're going to find out anyway.
Yeah.
One way or another. And it may be a worse effect than if you just said it outright. Maybe you did help them, maybe you didn't. I don't know, right? Like those are all the different pathways of the decisions you make in life and where it can take you and all the different variations and the variants of yourself. And that's why one of the reasons that we are expounding on just why this film's so damn good and why it's so beautifully written. It's just, I was like, when it was over, I gasped because I was beside myself. It just felt like I was watching and reading someone's heart, like several people's hearts. Obviously, there's thousands of people working on this, but like it was heart. I'm sorry to sound like a Planeteer. Heart. It was heart. It was outrageous how deep it was.
And this is something else. Like talking to Peter Ramsey today, he was telling me that the original plan was for it to be like an hour longer. Like, it was not going to end where it ended.
And I would have sat right then and there.
I would have sat right through it, too. But I'm also happy, and that shows you how editing and stuff works out and can change the whole thing because they realize, and he's like, having seen that longer cut, he realized that he's like, no, this was the magic.
This was the magic.
Because, it is a big cliffhanger, and we got to wait a year. But
Huge.
It's like much more than that because it would have been an hour more, and then there still would have been another film. It wouldn't have been like this would have been the whole thing all at once.
Yeah.
It still would have been another one.
They made the right decision.
They might have made it, or I'm not sure, because I think there was also a cut where it would have been everything in 3 hours, and it just would have left so much on the table.
It would have, yeah. And from a story perspective, I understand why they did what they did. That actually makes a lot of sense. Now, granted, while we all say we would have just sat there for another 2-3 hours, the fact is, it's just like, let's savor what we had too, right?
Yeah.
And let's get out of the Netflix idea where I just want everything right now. Like, perhaps you should marinate on what you just saw, glean some understanding and idea and lessons and this and that, and watch it. And also, if you and I'm not trying to dumb it down, but just from a business perspective, it makes more sense to chop it up into more than one film. So
there it is. Get that guap, baby. Hey, Peter Ramsey, executive producer. I love to see it. You know what I mean?
I mean, and again, and I know he didn't necessarily make that business decision, but I'm just saying, let's be clear. There's a big corporation behind this. They want their money's worth. Yeah. So there's that.
But also that, like I say, that works out because the version would have been a 3-hour film that might have shortened a lot of scenes in this one that we saw, and then shortened scenes in the next one that we're gonna see. Instead of letting these things breathe and like have that opening where you have 20 minutes of Gwen Stacy, which, goddamn it, like you said, I was the same way. I could not. I'm sitting there like, oh my God, this is so good. This is so good.
It.
And then it's the graffiti slap, the sticker gets slapped, and that's and I'm like, holy shit.
This is the intro. We haven't even started the film. We didn't even start the main.
I just saw a whole movie, like a whole ass movie, and then all right. So we talked about Gwen. We talked about Miles. We got to talk about my man Miguel because you also mentioned this earlier, and I want to go back to it.
Yeah. Well, we talked about Gwen and Miles' relationship. We didn't talk about them particularly, like Miles himself. We'll
get into that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's also we don't want to spoil everything. We don't need to tell every point.
No. I just
like seeing my man growing into a man.
I was gonna say that's what I really mean. Like,
yes.
he's clearly a different person than what you saw in the previous film. You see actual character growth. It's not like The Simpsons where they don't age.
Yes.
Physical, mental, emotional growth.
Yes. Really,
I love to see that.
I really love to see it. And look, I know certain people have problems with my man Shamit Moore. You know what I mean? But he is a young black man working and surviving in Hollywood. It is difficult enough as it is. It is an insane world that man lives in every day. I cannot understand it. And especially being as young as he is, I'm willing to forgive him for saying dumb shit.
It's just self-inflicted L's, right? That is years ago now. So
yeah, it's years ago. So let it ride. And what I want to point out and give him his flowers while he's here, he's doing a fucking incredible job as Miles Morales over these 2 films.
He absolutely does.
Absolutely incredible to have gone from the younger Miles to the Miles that is growing into the man now. And it's the animation work is incredible. Just, physically change. And there's like certain shots, like the shot of Miles when he's about to follow Gwen and he looks back out into the city before he jumps into the Spider-Verse. And it's like, this is a grown-ass man looking back into the city. Like that shot right there, I was like, this is a grown man. And then when he's around his parents, he's still, more of a kid looking.
Right? Because he's like 15 or 16 in this film.
Yeah, I think 16.
16.
Yep.
He's 16.
Yeah, 16. Yep. Yeah. And so that's like, but that shot when he's by himself and it's so, it's little touches like that because he's by himself. He's not with his parents. He's about to go out into the real world of the Spider-Verse. So he's looking back at the old world that he's leaving behind. And it's like, this is a grown-ass man about to make grown-ass man decisions.
And I still want to make the point, Ben, what you're saying, like, grown-ass man in terms of the world that he's about to enter and of growing. He's still a child.
He's a baby.
He's still a baby. And,
he's a baby.
And I just want to make that distinction because that happens a lot with young black kids in general. Like, they try to
real life real quick. Intercedes. That's what happens with young black kids. Real life will not allow a young black kid to be a young black kid. Real life is going to make you a man, whether, and that's what our parents do their best to shield us from because they know that this world of toxic whiteness is going to come at you and give you real life decisions. Like I was faced with real life decisions at 15, 16 because I was a black boy.
Adult decisions.
Adult decisions, life or death decisions at 15 or 16 because I was faced with cops, etc. I was faced with guns, etc. And I wasn't even living in I'm not selling dope on the corner.
You weren't in the super hood or nothing, but
no, but I was a DJ. I was out, I'd be out. I was enjoying myself. I'd go out to parties. And just by doing stuff like that, you be in situations where it's life or fucking death.
Well, you're minding your business, as we see time and time again. You live in your life minding your business, and then forced by the environment and powers that be.
And because everyone around me, the rest of the black people, were not in as good a situation as I was. So, that's what happened. So it's like, that's what this film is, it works on so many levels. Because it's like, it touches on that. It shows you what, blackness is, but it also is like, he's also a superhero. And he's a superhero about to be faced with superhero, which is life or death decisions.
And a lot of especially, again, I speak on this as a Marvel adjacent movie, just even this next phase, bringing in the younger characters and trying to tell their stories about them coming up to become the next crop of Avengers and things like that. We talked about a lot when we saw Kamala Khan with her show, how we really love seeing her pathway through high school and you get to see the real life implications of growing up and then growing up with powers and how you have to balance that with family and culture. And we see that time and time again with Miles. And that's one of the reasons why his story and this overall story is so beautiful, because it also has deep culture rooted within it. Cultures, actually.
I mean, just culture.
It's amazing. We actually talked a bit about Gwen Stacy, who was also voiced by Haley Steinfeld, she's one of my faves. I know she's one of your faves.
Been my fave since True Grit.
Since True Grit.
Seen True Grit. Go watch it up.
It's so good. She was so good, and she was a little girl in that, basically, right?
Eating that shit. It was
so good.
With grown ass men who are incredible actors,
she held her
eating them niggas, like eating them.
We have Shameik Moore as Miles Morales, obviously. Isaac as Miguel O'Hara, Spider-Man 2099, right?
All right. Let's stop there real quick, because before we get to the rest of the characters, I do want to touch on Miguel. And you touched on this earlier, and I think this is fully true. I don't think Miguel is completely right. I think he's operating on what he knows, once again, a fan who only operates on what they know. And because of what they grew up on, has to be the way it is. He's
and
like,
his experience.
In my experience, this is how it's gotta be. So your fucking uncle gotta die, dog. You know what I mean? If you're gonna be a Spider-Man, Uncle gonna die. And so, like,
Uncle Ben's rice, dog.
Yeah, and so I think in the second film, or the third film in the trilogy, we're gonna learn, and he's gonna learn, because I don't think obviously he's not the villain of the series, and he doesn't have to come around or die. That could happen. But I don't think that he's completely right in this film. That's I'm when I say that, I mean about his theories about the Spider-Verse.
I don't think so either.
Yeah,
a lot of people aren't completely right about their approaches and their decisions they make. And
we all operate off that.
Back on what I said about this being so humanistic as a story, and forget about the fact that it's animated. Take away the animation. This is put in live action, all live action if you wanted to. This shit still works.
Put it in a book.
Put it in a book.
You read the script. It's gonna work. I promise.
Put it in
an
audiobook. Still works.
Yeah, I've read enough scripts, and when it's a great movie, it's a great fucking script. Ain't never been a great movie without a great fucking script. Shit.
Yeah.
I ain't seen it.
Yeah.
Ever. Ever in my life. I ain't never seen it. If you got one, let me know. I'd like to know about it. Documentary, maybe they ain't got a script, but
And I do hope that they show that he's not right, because he's so freaking rigid. Like, he reminded me of Hawkman in Fans, yes, but he also reminded me of Hawkman in that. Because Mans was like straight up
I'll get my ass kicked over and over again.
And Black Adam, he was such a cop. I'm like, God damn, like, relax, sir.
Yeah.
And that's how I felt about it. Like,
look who Gwen keeps relating to as father figures.
But he was unyielding.
Her father.
Like her father. And I'm still talking about Miguel. Unyielding, unwavering. This man was the freaking Terminator. I literally sat there and said he's T2. Like the whole entire T-1000. The whole fucking time he was on screen, he was so aggy. And I was just like, are you... And it reminds me, like, of just fans that just are so violently oppressive against anything different from the norm.
I'll tell you how good this movie is and how great Spider-Man 2099 is in it. I was one of the people, like I said, I was reading comics all through that era, and I ignored the 2099 run like it never happened. I never read an issue. Did not give a damn. Maybe read one annual or something along the way. That was it. Now that I came home for this movie, I went on Comixology and downloaded Spider-Man 2099 and started reading that.
Of course you did.
I was like, I gotta know about this nigga. Like, I gotta read all his stories now.
What's his problem?
I love this nigga. Like, I'm about to read Spider-Punk after that. And and on that, let's get to the rest of the cast and crew. Because
big
my
ups.
man, Big
Daniel
ups,
Kaluuya.
man like Daniel,
the king of the DSS Society, the Dark Skin Society, the DSS.
Man like Daniel.
Mandem Hobart Hobie Brown, also known as Spider-Punk.
God fucking damn.
Stand out in this film. Stand out character. Stand out fucking introduction. Just
everybody's slow motion introductions was amazing. Because Spider-Man 29's and his musical score, like 29's little notes was almost up there with Prowler's. Prowler's has the best theme.
Because it's jarring.
Yes,
and
of anyone in this series so far. But 2099's Blade Runner-esque, like, futuristic theme when he first showed up was fucking... Ooh, I gotta get that soundtrack. Yeah. That shit was fire.
Spider-Punk was so beautifully played. First of all, voice acted in general. Yes. Great. Really, really, really good. Incredible. And it's just... And of course, the punk / UK slang /
anarchy, fighting fascism.
Really, like
F the PM, the Prime Minister.
Black. And he's black.
Shout out to my brother Awate, big fan of the show. If y'all don't know, you can go on Tidal or whatever streaming service right now. Look up Awate, Awate. Dope ass artist, incredible music, also incredible writer, and British and African and a revolutionary. And like, as soon as I saw the film, I turned to Tatiana after and I thought, yo, that's a Wate on screen right there. Like, I text him immediately, like, bro, you are going to be in love with this man, because that is how Awate rolls. Straight up revolution all day, fuck everything.
Yeah, I was a big fan of Spider-Punk in this film. Like, I knew I would like him as a character, just the little bit that I saw of him during the early times of previews and stuff. But I really, really enjoyed Mr. Anti-Establishment,
Anti-everything.
anti everything social club.
Anti everything, yeah. The anti everything. Anti being anti. You know, like he's so fucking contradictory. I love it. Like he's
super. He's
great.
A conundrum.
Yes.
He is a walking contradiction. He lives and breathes and luxuriates in his own contradiction.
And like we talked about the different states of animation, and they did this in the first film where like Nor, Ham, all these characters are all rendered and animated completely differently. I mean, I loved them on the first time, but the second time my jaw was dropping watching Spider-Punk interact with Miles. Just the way his character's animated, and like at one point Miles walks and pushes his leg aside, and my jaw dropped. Like, how y'all doing this shit? I asked.
Can we talk about the
all
animation?
These tricks? Like,
I have to ask them. Like for Peter Ramsey, I don't know. You asked him. You said, "How did you do this?" And he said he don't know. Like,
no, I mean he knows because he was involved in the first one, but it's just
right.
Like,
the second time, like
there's so many tricks they're doing. They just keep stepping up their game.
This is a masterclass. Beyond everything else we said, this film is a masterclass in animation.
Let's wait before we do that. Let's go to the last. We got to talk about my man's, the last other Spider-Man, and I don't have.
Did you actually really say much about Jessica Drew, Spider-Woman?
No, we didn't. Issa Rae? We didn't talk about Jessica Drew enough, and we didn't talk about.
Yeah, I just want to say
Pray Love.
I was looking forward to Spider-Woman because it's Issa Rae. Issa Rae is like one of my top people, period. Mm-hmm. And I love the fact there's another black Spider character, Spider-Woman, all that. She was cool as fuck, motorcycles, all that stuff. I didn't realize this, and Ben said that it was during the previews and everybody knew, but maybe I just missed it, or maybe I purposely just ignored it. Didn't realize it. She's pregnant.
Yes, she is.
During the film, and like visibly pregnant.
Visibly. And it raises all kind of questions, right? All right, now to go into the history of Jessica Drew real quick. Jessica Drew is the second Spider-Woman. The first is Valerie, the librarian, who was a black woman. And, it's a real weird story, but she's canon for those who want to argue about it. But anyway, Jessica Drew is like the original main Spider-Woman. And she was a Caucasian woman. And she had a long run in, I want to say, 70s. I wasn't reading that shit. I didn't know nothing. I just know about her through general ongoings. But she had a long run, and then she retired, like I told you. And other people took up the mantle for a while. Different things happened. Then she, I want to say that once again, this might have been Brian Michael Bendis bringing her back around. Like, I'm not sure who brought her back around, but they brought her back around, and then she got powers. She got pregnant, etc. There was a lot of controversy. There's a famous cover where she's on the cover of her comic being pregnant, and people were upset about it, woo. But all the time she was Caucasian. So there was some uproar, once again, as usual, when characters, but this one's identified as Jess Drew, and they actually show you other Spider-Women. There's Jessica Drews in the background who are Caucasian. But once again, her being pregnant and black was some uproar. But I wasn't sure how it was to be handled. And I was, a little because I knew going in. And it was, her introduction is right up there with all the rest. Just amazing.
Great introduction.
Will you adopt me? What? Between her and Gwen is some of the most amazing comedic timing. Like Issa and Haley Steinfeld are just doing it right there. I mean, they're doing it through everything.
Great interactions. Great
Once
again, fantastic writing, because the writing, the actors are acting out what their talent is also lending to the vision and the explanation and what you see of the character. It was written.
It was written. It was
written.
As Nas said, as God said, it was written because it was what? Like, will you adopt me? After she realizes that she's pregnant and just out there serving fools with no problem.
Right. And there's two sides that people may look at that. They may be like, yo, that's so powerful. Showing a black Spider-Woman and thank you for mentioning that this was actually already in previous stories when she was white, but she's pregnant, she's still doing the damn thing. And you actually see that repeated because, well, you see that because he's also you see him in the cast list. The Peter Parker that we met from last movie.
Yes, Peter B. Parker. That's
Peter
also
B.
known.
Parker.
He's been shown in trailers.
Okay, but also the little one?
Yes.
Yeah,
that's also all this is once again comic knowledge as well.
Okay, fine.
That Mayday Parker is the daughter of Peter and Mary Jane in an alternate reality.
And you see that, so it's not like she's the only one. You have her, she's pregnant. Peter B. Parker is fucking in the middle of fights, like out and out fights with his infant daughter in the little kangaroo pouch. And I was just like, wait a minute.
In her crocheted Spider-Man mask.
In a little crocheted Spider-Man mask. Like, and granted, she's a little bit more than a regular baby, but still, like the fact that it's like, bring your child or unborn child to work day. Like, it's pretty powerful. So on that end, that's one side of the spectrum. There is another set of people who are like, once again, you're showing a black woman doing everything, that she's a superhero and she's doing everything while she's carrying and this and
black
that.
Woman,
and I'm like, well,
I hate it, but like someone once said that there is no culture. I mean, so not once. Recently, I read this. There's no culture in American culture without black culture. Like, not no culture, but like no. Every culture comes from us. And I was thinking about it for a second. I'm like, ooh. On some levels, yes, I'm not sure, but it is our fate, as black people. Like, black women are going to save the world, and black men are going to, get killed, while it happens.
Oh,
it's like,
damn, man, what the? I don't like that canon at all.
It's a cold world out here. But that is like part of like, that's why I get it when black women are like, oh, I'm tired of being the one saving the world. But I'm like, fam, that is what we going to do. That like, I was talking to Mello, a marketer, shout out to Mello, and we were talking about the whole WJ strike, and a lot of information came out recently about, I'll just say his name because that's my man, I don't give a fuck, my man Damon Lindelof, and how he acted. And so I hit up Mello, and I was like, yo, man, I fuck with Damon. This is one of my heroes, and this man was a pure scumbag. Like, if I had my dream job of working on Lost at the time, which was my dream job of being a writer on Lost, it would have been the end of my career because I would have wanted to punch this fucker in the face.
He may not be a hero
fired.
no more. Not
no,
hero.
I would have gotten fired. It would have been
cool
over. I already know how it would go down because I didn't have the same experience on American Gods. But to this day, even on American Gods, I had, there were issues. And I know because I spoke my mind, it's one of the reasons why I'm not constantly working to this day. Because I didn't give a shit, and that's just how it is. And I will never give a shit, sorry. But it is what it is. So I was speaking to Mello about it, and he's like, Ben, that's, as it's tough, but that's our job. We got to get in these spots so we can take these people out. That's our job to save the world. Ain't gonna be Harriet Tubman, she ain't fucking do this so we can be like, oh, it was much worse then.
Why are you bringing Harriet into this?
What did his mom say? Your Abiel's, this ain't your life, nigga. You know what I mean? This goes to your ancestors. This is not my life. I don't live this for myself. I've said that many times. I plant the seeds. I will never see the trees that grow from them. But I'm here to plant them seeds because somebody else planted seeds that they never saw the trees that I sit under that fucking shade of.
So
while they was out picking cotton, there was no shade. You know what I mean? I can chill,
here we
nigga.
go. Okay, Dr. Umar, relax.
I'm just keeping it.
I get
that's
it.
what I mean. I lived through them. We all lived through them.
Yes.
And that's what this film talks about. Like, you want to tell your own story, yes, and we all want to tell our own story, and I don't want to have to be the one to save the world. And maybe my great-great-grandkids can tell that story.
Yes.
But right now, the world needs to be saved. And who else gonna do it but us beautiful people?
I'm gonna tell y'all right now, if I get powers, I ain't saving nobody. I told you that before.
Nigga, if I get powers, I'm definitely saving this fucking world. Because I gotta live in it. It might involve me taking over the world, but hey, you gotta,
But listen, you see, this is what I'm
making
talking
an
about.
omelet out here, folks. I'm making an omelet. I might have to crack some eggs.
I'm gonna save the world, but I might take it over. Like,
I might have to crack some eggs,
world.
dog. That's all I'm saying. Eggs gotta get cracked if I'm making this omelet.
I'm floating away with my Jordans on. I don't know what to tell you.
Nah. See, I'm at least being like, nah. I'm sitting there with my Jordans on, like, get right or.
I'll save some people.
Or I'm choosing violence.
I help some people. Shout out to Brian Tyree Henry, who plays Jefferson Davis.
Who plays Indian Peter? Because I don't have his name.
Peter Patakaba.
Yes. And that is who we need to shout out as well, because another
Karan Soni.
Okay, I don't know who that is. I'm not sure who that actor is, but he is a superstar in the making if he is not already one. Because just like Spider-Punk, I felt like he stole damn near every scene he was in.
He did steal a lot of scenes. Also, you do know who he is.
Yes, okay,
Damn
who is he?
it.
Who is he?
He was Dopinder in Deadpool. The cab driver in Deadpool, Dopinder, that ended up being sidekick.
Okay, yeah, he was mad funny in that joint. Yeah, okay. Hell yeah, okay. And I've seen him in some other stuff too. Yo, he killed it. I mean, he killed it as this dog because this is another thing like going against canon that was so ill. And I've never read Spider-Man India where that story came from. There's another one I hope they feature. There's an African Spider-Man who's got to be in the next one. Oh man, I hope he shows up as well. But I loved it because he's a non-struggle Spider-Man.
Yeah,
and that's something that's also usually the canon is Spider-Man must struggle through everything. And he was like, I wake up looking good. I ain't got to work out because I'm already buff.
Yeah,
I've been
my hair's
Spider-Man 6
perfect.
months. This shit's mad easy. Every time I fight somebody, I win. It's just like, this is great. Both his parents, everybody was alive up to that point, so that was an interesting take. And I loved his, take. And also just all the little stuff about chai tea and all that, beautiful. And then that goes to that animation and something else I want to mention about the animation. Then we can get into the whole of the animation, but how every universe had its own style. And what was very ill to me is how the Spider-Man, like Miles and Gwen, would take on the characteristics of that universe while they were in it. Like they started to become slightly more animated like that universe, while they still retain their own animation style from it. Like when they're in 2099, everything is glistening because of all the lights and how everything is shining in this beautiful Blade Runner. I mean, not even Blade Runner, because it was more like Halo at its best type world, like everything was just looking glistening, except when they were underground and you see all the dirt and grime and all that, which was also ill. Like that 2099 world, man, I could have spent a whole movie in that because there was a whole lot going on. And I guess that's all from the comics, but that was like, it was a lot going on in that one.
Yeah, just to preface this part of what we're talking about, and I said it before, I'll bring it back. This is a true masterclass in animation.
God.
And the levels of what you could do and can do and maybe probably couldn't do until this film came out.
Pushing limits.
This pushes every limit, envelope, euphemism you want to say, and it pushes it off the map. If the world is flat, it's somewhere in no man's land. This film, when we talking about level, and yes, this is not an insult to any other really well done animation. This is just, to me, this is
how it should be done.
This is beyond anything I've ever seen at this point.
And it's like what I love about hip hop or old, all great hip hop, not just old, any great hip hop, and it's about pushing the limit. And it's how I always take how I feel about DJing. Like, I'm never trying to shit on any other DJ who I'm DJing with, but I'm trying to make it difficult to DJ after me. And I want you to make it difficult to DJ after you, because that makes me raise my bar up.
And this makes it difficult to, and it's going to push, to your point, it's going to raise the bar and push future animation to, what do we say?
The levels, raise the bar. Shout out to Combat Jack. And that's like
push the envelope.
Push the envelope. And that's what I like. The first one did that. And then I felt like Mitchell versus the Machines responded. And then I felt like Puss in Boots responded. Those were the only two films where I felt like it was like when my man did the control verse. When, Kung Fu Kenny did the control verse. And it was like, look, even if I ain't mentioning your name, nigga, I'm shitting on everybody. What you gonna say? And it ain't about like dissing me. It's about raising the bar, doing doper rhyme than this.
Hogan, we coming for you, nigga. Like, and it was very much that energy.
But it's that energy. But it's like also just raise the bar. Like, you ain't got to say nothing about me. You ain't got to diss me. But you got to raise the bar of what you're doing.
Yeah.
And Mitchell versus Machines, Puss in Boots. Those are the two where I was like, all right, Spider-Verse, y'all taught that shit. Now what y'all got?
I don't know what kind of.
They came back with it.
I don't know what kind of After Effects 3002.5 program y'all got. I don't know what kind of room at this point y'all using room size. I mean, not room size, but y'all using some real big, like.
Oh, shout out to Lost Ollie, which Peter Ramsey is also involved in. That's
Lost Ollie's good.
Oh, that's another one to raise that bar.
I really legitimately want to know how they did this film, because the level of processing power and the level of planning it takes to have 7, 8, maybe more different animation styles layered on top of each other in the same frame.
Yeah.
And being consistent, not just that, consistent. And then sometimes in the same scene, but when the shot changes between two characters, the animation style changes.
Yeah.
The background changes, the foreground changes, the way the character is drawn changes. And yes, you could kind of say, oh, that's easy because the camera's cutting away. But when it's happening so quickly, someone's saying 2 words and then the next words, it's a different view.
I mean, if you want to make that right, you could say it's all easy because it's animated and nobody's like,
none of this
happening
shit
in live
is easy.
action.
Right.
But it ain't fucking easy.
None of this shit, like, and this film also loops, and that's the code why this film is so cold. It loops in live action too.
Yeah. I knew it was going to do that. I wasn't like, because during the, lead up, the director said that we're going to, the Indian dimension. We're going to 2099 and we're going to a secret dimension. So as soon as he said that, I was like, okay, when's Tom Holland showing up? I knew it, but it wasn't Tom, but that was still fire.
You get live action.
Tom could be in the next one.
Mixed with every animation imagined and probably you didn't imagine before. And it's like, I feel like I'm downplaying how outrageous this stuff was because I can't come up with the proper explanations for what I saw. Like, Peter, how did y'all do that?
Yeah, once again, how did y'all do that? Like,
Kent Powers, come on the show, explain to us.
Please, talk to us. Yo, boy, we're going to have to have one of the animators on the show and have him talk through some of this stuff.
Frank Anthony, explain.
Yeah, we're going to have to, we need to, because, and like, I tweeted about that today. I said there should be, and there will be books written about the animation, but I also, once again, go back to the writing and go back to everything you saw on screen is probably in that script. And I was just so impressed with, like, how lyrical, how you talked about how
kinetic,
physical, how kinetic, how emotional, how everything, how this, like the theme, like when I made that tweet about the writing, I didn't even fully form this thought about in my head that we talked about earlier about how Miguel's canon and how, this whole film is about canon and about how Miles has traditionally been a, outlier, and that all coalesced afterwards. And I'm like, wait a minute, all that's happening. Plus, this beautiful story is being told. Like, once again, that shit is just, all that shit I mentioned is just Easter eggs. Because that's irrelevant to this story that's really being told about Miles finding his own identity. And it's not irrelevant because it's kind of integral to the idea of what Miguel is doing. But it's also like a layer to that, while it's not the main thing. Because the main thing is Miguel's just trying to save his universe. But when you really look at it, why is Miguel trying to save his universe?
If you remove the garnish, it's still a meal.
It's still, it's the most delicious meal I've had.
It's the most delicious.
Yeah,
it's the most 5-star Michelin delicious you can get.
Let's talk about some of the Easter eggs that we love, because there's too many. Yeah.
Before that,
yep.
The soundtrack.
Okay. I mean, I mentioned it. I mentioned it. Wait, one thing to the animation, they had a DJ. His hands were on the turntables the way they should be.
Did they do it right?
They did it right. Everything was perfection.
Okay.
No notes. Thank you.
No notes. Okay, good.
Thank you.
The DJ has spoken. Okay.
Thank you. I mean, it's a rarity, even in 2023. It's so sad. Like, it's a rarity. When DJs are on film, it's always done wrong. And
they're just pressing any old thing.
There's like fucking a million DJs out here now. You could ask any of them, and they're just gonna tell you this is where your hand should go. And they don't even do it. So,
they don't bother. They're like, oh, just miming
Let's have it
be a
backwards
DJ
every time. It's always backwards for some reason. I just like mind blown. Anyway, they had it right. Soundtrack, phenomenal. And then once again, needle drops, which have become too much in film. And I talked about this with Guardians of the Galaxy. The needle drops in this, the Rakim, the Ain't No Love in the Heart of the City.
Ooh, when that drop is for that specific scene. Specific that I'm not going to talk about?
No, we're not going to talk about no more than that. Other than I will also mention once again as a DJ, when my man dropped the M44-7 needle on the record, them shits is now discontinued. It's the Shure needle. It's discontinued. Okay. It's one of like DJ's favorite needles, and they're gone. Like, you might have heard me, Tatiana, before the music dropped. As soon as he I gasped because I was like, oh. my baby, like I missed you, so that's another.
It's real in some universe.
Yeah, and that was funny to me because I don't think they had the exact number right, and because it's this other universe, and that's how they did a lot of the Easter eggs and stuff that I would talk about in a second. But that was beautiful to me because once again, it's attention to detail. It's like, yes, Aaron would have the dope needle because this nigga's a dope ass nigga. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so like.
No, the music, just everything you said was perfect when we came to the music. And going into, like you said, the Easter eggs, I do want to just say that once more and really emphasize the attention to detail.
I mean, it's beyond.
There's a scene, and it's almost incomprehensible how much detail they've put into, and that's why, like, I personally, besides it just being a good film, even if I want to watch it one time just solely off of to try to see more of the Easter eggs and the detail.
I can't wait to be able to pause
I want to watch it 3 times for the story, and then 3 more times just to look at detail, because there was things, and then clever details, unnecessary details for the details. In Miles' room or his roommate's fucking playing Spider-Man on the PS5. Like, and it's like a very particular scene in the game, and it's just
the
like,
Amazing Fantasy. I think it's Amazing Fantasy 16 cover, which is the debut of the original Peter Parker Spider-Man. They showed it in the first film, but it comes up again in here. And in this one, Miles is reading it, and it's called Real Life Tales of Spider-Man because Spider-Man was a real life person in this universe.
I'm about to faint. It's so good. It's so good. And
Miles has 3-Pac in his notebook instead of 2-Pac. It's 3-Pac in that
like
universe.
that, like the shifts from humans or Earth 616 us reality, right? Like just the little. It's just the little shout-outs and stuff. Obviously, Sony gonna shout out themselves. You see the Sony headphones, and I'm wearing Sony headphones. Like, come on, fam.
The Spot grabs Venom Mint when he goes into the Venom universe.
Man. Like
the Lego universe.
And when I say the attention to detail, like the cohesiveness to the and I've said it that I felt, and I want to make sure I'm very mindful about when I express what I'm saying in a moment, which is that I felt that this topped the first film. The first film was absolutely necessary to give the groundwork, and this film pays homage to itself.
Yeah, once again, we stand on the shoulders of giants, and this film stood on the shoulders of a giant, and because of that, it allowed itself to be greater than it was, and it's one, like I described it as Empire Strikes Back. Star Wars is a perfect fucking movie, and then Empire Strikes Back is somehow better. But it's also because there's Star Wars, because you have this perfect movie before it, you can come in Empire Strikes Back and seemingly ruin Han, cut off Luke's hand, and have Darth Vader be his father, and fuck everyone's head up because you had this other movie that wasn't that. And so then it's like, no, but we can take what you did and flip you, and normally sequels don't take what you did and flip you, they just like do the same shit over.
Yeah.
Tell me the same story again.
This first film, giant begets a giant.
Yeah.
A giant begets a titan.
Yeah.
Like
yeah,
if the first Spider-Verse film was a giant, this film was a titan.
Yeah, I agree.
Quite literally. It's Aaron versus Armin. They're Titan forms if you want to do do Attack on Titan analogies, right? Like just in terms of the size and scope.
Yeah.
It's just on some other level that you just it's unfathomable. And again, the attention to detail in the Easter eggs, the attention to detail in the characterizations, the scenes, the music, the look, the feel. And to have that in an environment where it's all blasting around you, quite literally, like this is.
Yeah, and even on that that you were talking about, that the story and how it all came together, that was one thing. Like the first time I saw it, where I was like, I don't know if I like this as much as I like the first one, because the first one was such a personal story. The second time I saw it now, however, I did not feel that way. I felt that this is a personal story on so many other levels.
So
that it hit me in the fucking heart on so many other ways.
And once
again, it becomes like how I feel about the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy right now, where I feel like that's an incredible trilogy, and each one built on the last one in the film, where it tells this complete story over all three. So I got to see the next one, and then hopefully they stick the landing. I have all faith that they will, and I just believe that this will be a complete story where it won't be. It's like any great run of comics. I can't like Peter David. I recently reread his Hulk run, and he's also the writer of the Spider-Man 2099 run, which is making me want to dig into it also because I love that motherfucker. And there's certain issues in that run I can pick out. It's like, this is a great issue. But it's the run. It's the story that he told over this whole run that is incredible to me and that holds such a place in my heart. And so that's what I mean, where I don't even do that thing. It's just better than the other one because it's going to be, is this story that they told a great story? And so far, this story that they're telling over these two, it's like what we even do when we're reviewing shows. I always tell people that, don't diss this shit when you're in the third episode. And you don't know what the writers have planned. It's a 10-episode arc. You don't know how it's going to go by the 10-episode arc.
Right. Now, you can critique how long it took you to get there. It might not be going
that well so far. And then you can extrapolate that it's like, this probably ain't going to make it. And you can give up if you want, whatever. But when this shit is two episodes in of a 3-episode story, and the first 2 episodes have just built upon it in the most beautiful fucking way, I'm not really separating like one. Like I said, it's the giant stand on them shoulders, So it's like, oh my God, they've done it. Over 2 movies, these motherfuckers are like, I'll be able to watch these 2 over and over again,
And when I say I can't believe it, not because I don't believe in people's abilities, I just cannot believe how the strength of the Miles Morales, the strength of the Black Panther, how much of that is in this? Like it's out of control. And just with everything we said, Benhameen, when it comes to this film, with the rewatchability being so freaking high, this is a 10 out of 10 for me.
I rewatched Into the Spider-Verse right before we went and saw this for the first time, and I was in tears. Like, I rewatched the first one, and there was moments where I bawled out. And like I say, those Spider-Man games for PS5 are the 2 of the only video games that both of them I bawled out while playing them. I bawled out. This story is more. It's so like. Not like it's such a slow build to the emotions that where it hasn't made me cry while I'm watching it.
I didn't cry. It just stuck to my ribs. It sticks to your ribs. Oh my God!
It's just so good. And one thing we haven't even talked about was the Spot, who is the villain.
Yeah,
and
I forgot about that nigga.
Who's playing him? First of all, because I think he does an excellent job as well.
Yeah, and not that I forgot about him. It's just like he's important to the story, but like the main thing is the growth of Miles, right? Yep. What's the Spot's real name in this? Patrick O'Hara?
Yep.
I mean, is it Patrick O'Hara? I think
so. I'm not even sure. And the funny thing is, shout out to my brother Andrew Higgins, who I grew up with. He had the first appearance of the Spot. And I always loved the Spot. I always thought he was a dope-ass character. But the way they did him in this made him horribly terrifying. And also took him to an extreme that I never saw in the comics where they connected him to all the multiverse and all that shit. And I just thought I thought that motherfucker was incredible.
Yeah. I don't know why, and maybe are we not supposed to know this yet? But there's got to be the listing of who plays the Spot.
Yeah, because it's actually because they had in the credits they had the actor's name. It's not Jason Schwartzman. It's oh my God, it's the other dude. I can't remember his name. It's not McLovin.
It's Jason Schwartzman.
It is McLovin, right?
That's McLovin. I don't know who this guy.
No. Jason Schwartzman is from
I mean, I know they all look alike to you, but
Rushmore, right?
He was in Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Yes.
He was in...
He's the villain in Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Grand Budapest Hotel.
Yes. Rushmore.
I Heart Huckabees and some other people. Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
Him.
Yeah,
the
Jason
Spot.
Schwartzman. Yeah, the Spot. Yeah.
He's important. Again, he is important.
That's not McLovin, though. No,
that's not him. No,
Jason Schwartzman's great, though. Yeah.
Yes, we're obsessing over Miles and Gwen and all this other stuff. He is important to the story, intrinsic, obviously, to the story because of how freaking terrifying he is.
Yes, and also how he starts off not so terrifying.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes it more terrifying because it's like you go from innocuous and almost a joke to be like, oh, okay.
And real quick. 0 to 100 real quick.
This is escalated quickly. And the way that, and then also the reason why it's so scary is because it's a one-minded track. It's a unyielding. Remember I said earlier about with Miguel and that unyielding Terminator-esque nonstop. That goal of I'm going to be your nemesis.
Yes, canon. You need a nemesis.
One mind. I don't care about shit else. It's on sight. Like, it's on sight. That's
you ruined my life, you know. I mean, not really. I mean, you were working for the Kingpin, you know, it's debatable.
But my point, like,
wrong place at the wrong time, you know, all that, you know.
Imagine this.
You
have an op, and day in, day out, there is no rest. It is on sight for you anytime they get within 2 feet of your face.
And he's constantly trying to power up.
And he's a Spot. And I don't know if y'all know the Spot's powers.
I mean, if you've seen the movie, you know it.
Portal ring a bell for anybody?
Yeah.
You know how terrifying that power is?
Portal on the next level, boy. That
Portal
man was sending you.
Portal was kind of the fun way of using that power. Like,
yeah.
It's terrifying. So, you know, there's a lot of like deep conversation about his story that I don't want to give away either, but like overall it's just it's great writing.
Amazing. And it ties into everything that we talked about, like people wanting things to be a certain way and they have to be that way. And also Miles has to face up to some of the things that, you know, when he did, you know, there's collateral damage to his actions and you know, you can't save everyone. And this is going to be one of the things that happens is people are going to get hurt and people are going to want revenge because of that.
We said that for years. I mean, it's also the story of groups like Damage Control. Like, well, what happens when that building gets collapses during the Avengers fight? What about the people inside? Who got caught up? Who died? Who didn't? Who lost their job because XYZ happened and Spider-Man was involved? Then what?
And it was so funny because before the film started, I turned to Tatiana. I was like, yo, I know who the Spot is. Because I just watched Into the Spider-Verse before I'd seen this one. And rewatching it, I see the scene when Kingpin's standing in the lab with a bunch of scientists and they all get blown up and Kingpin's the only one who's shown later. So I'm like, what happened to the rest of them niggas? And it's like...
right, and we always asking the question, well, what happened, right? Like,
yeah, but you always think about, you know, fuck them scientists. They got blown up, you know? But then if one of them, you know, turns into the Spot.
The story is always there, especially in these superhero stories. Like, well, what about the collateral damage? And what about these people that are not being written about? There's a story there.
Yep.
And
there it is.
A story that has ripple effects, butterfly effect, whatever you want to call it, unto greater stories. And it's played so well here. And how much it expands. And it's going to expand through the next film. Like, Benhameen,
No, and that's another thing. Like, I know him from the comics, but I ain't never seen that nigga look like he looked like at the end of this movie. That was like, oh, it's a problem. That's movie. Next year, it's a big problem. The problem child turned out to be a big problem.
I was gonna say, if you see him come down, she walk the other way, but it don't matter because he's gonna put a spot out and be in front of you, so it don't matter.
It's tight. That nigga's way worse than the T-1000.
Terrifying.
Horrific. All right.
Horrific. Anything else you wanted to mention, Ben, when it came to any?
Miles has a poster on his wall of A$AP Rocky's first album, and it is BRT Rocky for Be Right There Rocky instead of A$AP Rocky. Amazing.
Oh my God, that is so cute. I love the details and the cleverness. I didn't see what
it's the Live Love Rocky album. I didn't see what they changed, if they did change that name.
Okay.
But yeah, it was BRT Rocky.
There's the cleverness in there.
I was sitting there like, BRT, be right, A$AP, be right, motherfucker.
There's people who worked on a movie in the movie. Go find them. There's so many Easter eggs. Listen,
I mean, so many.
Watch the movie
Miles
first.
Says snitch, and it says it in the words.
Like, and then and they still follow the comic book format. You see what I love the most. One of the things I love the most was when like you saw like certain spots. You saw the not spots, but certain areas of the film. You saw the comic book notes, the little rectangles that would pop up with the asterisk.
Editor's notes.
That's
an editor's notes.
Editor's notes during the film.
That's an editor's note. So editors used to do that. Marvel used to be famous for this. I guess DC would too, but especially way back in the day, they don't do it as much anymore. But it used to be an editor would like, if it'd be some obscure reference, like if the character was like, oh, the Infinity Gauntlet, Thanos has that. It'd be like, oh, the Infinity Gauntlet was last seen in issue 1 something of this.
Right.
Or it'd be like,
and it's useful
that's what this power does. Like when he talked about the extra dimensional, the Vulture, the Shakespearean Vulture in the beginning of this was amazing. You see like formulas because it's Da Vinci and shit. So as he's flying, you see formulas in the air. Like
No,
just
it's out of control. It's out of control. The levels that they went, and the thought and the comprehension that they have of what it means and what it means to go. This film is what it means to go all in on a concept.
Yeah.
Several concepts at once and execute it flawlessly.
Flawless.
I personally, I'm sure other people do. I personally don't have no notes for this film.
Nah.
And that's a first in a long time.
If I did, I'd eat them because it's like, what do I know? I didn't do this film, Fuck it. If it's got mistakes, I can live with them,
No notes.
Yeah, I can live with them because, it's
Tens
still better than
board.
anything I would have done. Y'all got this. Buy my graphic novel and hope it lives up to that. That's all I got,
Y'all won.
I'm trying to tell original stories like y'all are, baby,
Yeah. I think we said enough, Ben.
Yeah,
you think we
I'm
said
good.
enough?
I think this is one of our longest for a movie.
Yeah.
But I think we made some really great.
Do you think
points.
we crushed on it enough?
I think we crushed on it. I don't think we're for all haters, as one of our YouTube comments.
Oh my
said.
God! And it's so funny when y'all say stuff like that because it's clear you didn't watch the actual episode or pay attention to us at all because you probably saw the cover and thought one thing and moved on. Watch and actually listen to what we say and even what we write. We're on the interwebs as well. We write things.
Mm-hmm.
And, you'll probably see a nuanced understanding of how we feel about something. But that being said, thank you for watching.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody, haters and lovers alike. We appreciate you because a view is a view. And this is Views from the 616, powered by ForAllNerds. I am Tatiana King. He's DJ Benhameen. Those are the names you can find us on the interwebs, on socials. You can also follow ForAllNerds to find out all of the ForAllNerds expanded universe, whatever you want to call it. Views from the 616, Castle Black, Pod, all these other places that we have where we talk about everything in different areas of fandom. Do a few things for us. We do this because we love it. We have passion for this. And we are successful because of people who love and appreciate us, right? And thank you to everyone who's been showing us love through our merch, ForAllNerds.com. That is our only, at this point, main merch page. We saw a few spammy scams out there. Listen, if you see our designs, and shout out to a few people, shout out to Latina Scribbles, shout out to Sketch Sawyer, who helped bring a lot of our designs to life and our ideas to life for these designs. If you see our designs anywhere else besides ForAllNerds.com, and we didn't sanction that or tell you that was us, it ain't us. Do not purchase, do not pass go when it comes to those random sites. Only go to ForAllNerds.com where you can get amazing designs such as this Wong Was Right shirt. Benhameen has on the newest, latest, and greatest anti-scroll social club with the puff print, okay? And then another reason why you should only be buying it from our site, or two reasons why, because the quality that we have cannot be replicated elsewhere because this is our in-house production, if you will, right? We own this, Benhameen, all right?
And not only do we own this, we care. Like,
we care.
We specifically went and got puff print on this because we were like, yo, the puff print will look sick. The regular flat print on this, that ain't really giving nothing to the customer. So, boom, we got the puff print, and it's luxurious. You see my fingers running over my chest? This shit is so buttery right here.
My bloody chest. We care about the quality, and the quality is not going to be replicated elsewhere. And we are a black minority-owned business. So you have to come to our site to support us. If you support anywhere else, you're supporting the man. And we don't know her. So
or him.
We don't know them.
So there we go.
ForAllNerds.com. You can also support us by going to our Patreon, patreon.com/ForAllNerds. That is where on every tier is a great tier because not only you supporting us, you get access to exclusive things such as maybe exclusive merch, maybe access to screenings well before everybody else, access to free gifts and giveaways, as well as...
We got a big one coming on that.
Yeah, man. As well as Patreon-only episodes that you can't see or hear anywhere else. So please make sure you hit up that Patreon. Appreciate you so much. What else? Make sure you are following us on the socials I mentioned earlier at ForAllNerds, on IG, TikTok, Twitters. twitch.tv/ForAllNerds.
Oh, yes.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, on twitch.tv/ForAllNerds, we are coming back in a big way. Not only do we have our shows streaming there, I just bought some new DJ equipment. I spent a pretty penny on it, so I'm going to be doing some marathon streams on that hoe. I promise you. We're going to put in some hours on there because I'm going to have to test this joint out, and I'm going to do it live. So, fuck it, we doing it live. So perhaps when you hear this episode, take a break and go over to Twitch, because by the time you hear this Friday afternoon, I might be on there. Yeah. I pretty much will be, because, we're doing this right now, Thursday night. But follow, turn on notifications. I promise you, I know I've said it many times in the past, but thanks to everybody at Patreon, we got the lights set up. We got everything cooking in this little studio that I call here. And thanks to my own, wallet being emptied out, I bought some new equipment that I now have to use, because since I bought it, I got to use it. So I'm going to be live on twitch.tv/ForAllNerds and twitch.tv/DJ Benhameen, because I got some other stuff coming on there, some music coming. And as y'all know, and if you don't know, my first ever graphic novel, Jimi Hendrix Purple Haze from Titan Comics, written by me and my brother Mello Brown, with art by the motherfucking legend Tom motherfucking Mandrake, drops November 7th. It is a sci-fi fantasy Afrofuturistic tale told in conjunction with the estate of Jimi Hendrix. It is personally to me the best thing I've ever written. I love it so much. I finally got to see the first 3 colored pages. I know y'all have seen the cover. It's out there. Very soon, y'all will start to see some interior work from it. Please pre-order it. Pre-ordering means the world to comic books and everything. It determines everything, like if we'll get a sequel to this bitch, all that good stuff. So please go to your local comic book shop, your local bookstore. Tell them you want Jimi Hendrix Purple Haze. And what were you going to say?
It's canon.
Not only is it canon, it is a completely new story. And even though we were obviously inspired, we stand on the shoulders of giants, I feel like we were telling our own story. And that was one of the things that I struck out to do, because that's something else I wanted to mention. Another great comic book is The Wicked and Divine. And it was one of the inspirations for this book, because The Wicked and Divine, just like Across the Spider-Verse, is about telling original stories and about the effect that the stories we tell ourselves have on us. And when we tell ourselves these stories, we feel like we have to live these stories instead of living new and original stories. And I really feel like Jimi Hendrix Purple Haze is a new and original story. I mean, it features a legend, but it is telling some wild shit that you ain't never seen Jimi Hendrix involved in. I'll tell you that. So go pick it up. Like I say, I know it's not this rock star shit, but it's some sci-fi, fantasy, musical, blackest shit I've ever wrote. Like I just like to describe it, it's AT Aliens in comic book form. Go pick it up, and thank y'all for the love on that.
So proud of my brother, DJ Benhameen. Be sure you are following us subscribe and mash that subscribe button on YouTube, youtube.com/ForAllNerds TV, or you could just type in ForAllNerds in the YouTube search bar and we will come up. You had to have that Baltimore accent there. YouTube. Make sure that you are subscribed so you can get notifications when we have new videos. You'll see us, our beautiful melanated faces. You'll also see our past videos and new videos where we're doing interviews and all sorts of amazing independent media shit that you love and enjoy. Be sure on your favorite podcast platform, all of them actually, just subscribe to or follow whatever the button says For All Nerds in order to listen to every show and brand that we produce. We thank you for absolutely everything you guys do for us. We thank you for your energy, for your love, for your support, even the hate, because listen, we don't care. You're listening to us. We appreciate the views, like I said before. This has been an episode of Views from the 616. We love you. Listen to you later. Talk to you later. Great. Good night.
If you've been listening all the way to this very end and you're on YouTube or any of our platforms, leave a comment that says it's a metaphor for capitalism. So I know you were here all the way.